turn over your son,
said Augustin Papa Gus Orlok, leaning back in his chair and lighting a Cuban cigar.
The boy you held in your arms as a baby, the boy you taught to fight, taught to shave, to be man. Would you give him up for Dad? No. No matter the terrible things he does, he is my boy. Detective. I would never betray my evil.
Orlok was a large man and intimidating enough in his own right, though his reputation preceded him. Detective Daniel Hale would have felt unsafe were it not for the wire tapped to his chest and the SWAT vans on standby not more than a block away. The detective never warned of the backup waiting, but Orlok was no fool. He'd been around the block more than once, and he knew the way these things worked. "Your son is a monster, Mr. Orlok," Hale said flatly, without looking up from his notepad. He'd been trying, and failing, to ignore the gauche confines of Orlok's office since he arrived, not to mention the two thugs guarding the door. Antique Victorian furniture, gaudy chandeliers, tenebristic family portraits, and dusty wine bottles. These were the aesthetic sediments of a Romanian crime lord. These things, and pinstriped suits it seemed. Orlok stood and walked towards his son's portrait, the expressionless face of a young boy on a dark backdrop. He stared up with his hands folded behind his back, the cigar pinched between his fingers.
Monster. But what is monster? Is bad, yes. Is bad for people. In Romania, we say Monstrul. The wolf of Sigarcha. He kill animal and children. But we don't call him Monstrul. We hate him. Want him dead. But he is just wolf. He does what wolves do, and we don't blame him for what he is. Ivan is not Monstrul.
"I don't care what you call him, Mr. Orlok. Your son butchers people. He eats them alive and leaves my department to deal with the mess. We found the last mess in Times Square. What was left, my partner's wife. We showed up, he found us slashed to ribbons in a filthy back alley."
How sad for your partner.
Orlok sarcastically spat. Hale could almost hear a smirk on his lips. Hale's expression tightened with rage, and went to grip his revolver in his holster. He restrained himself and slumped back into the chair when he saw Orlok's goons ready to approach. "Rest assured, Orlok, whether you intend to cooperate or not, we will find Ivan, and he will answer for what he's done." He spoke in a low tone, almost muttering. Orlok ignored his threat.
Ivan was a foolish boy. Killed a nigger girl in Harlem just for scratch his car.
Hale, a black man, was naturally offended, but refrained from commenting. He was used to this racism from organized crime syndicates. Orlok turned and pointed at him with the smoldering stub of his cigar.
I don't give bail, yes. It's bad for business, what he did. I give him time to cool his feet himself for a while.
He flicked his ashes on an ornate ashtray on his desk, and then drew another deep drag. He exhaled and spoke airily.
Then he is coming home a few nights after sentence. He show up on doorstep with blood on clothes, face in hand. "Help me, Papa," he says. "It hurts. I'm dying." He's looking sick, skinny, and fight like ghost.
Hale grimaced, unmoved. He went scratching jargon in his notepad.
If you're expecting sympathy from me, you can save it. I don't identify with murderers. I'm not interested in your sad story. I'm only here for details, cut and dry.
Orlok's calm exterior had reached its limit. He glowered at Hale as he smashed the butt of his cigar violently into the ashtray.
What would you do, detective? What would you do if your child is come home sick, scared, and asking, "Help me, Papa"? What are you doing if he is losing hair, becoming thin, and turning something not human? Do you turn your shoulder to him, saying, "I cannot help you, son"? He is family. He is, how you say, chip of old block. I will not give him to you.
Hale regained his composure and professionalism.
Obstruction of justice is a federal offense, Mr. Orlok. Could leave you cooling your feet in a cell for a good long while.
Orlok dismissed the threat with a wave of a hand, like fanning away a sour smell.
So is the rest of my business in your country. And I have been in business for a long time. I am not afraid of your blue boys.
Boys in blue, boss. One of the thugs rather insolently chimed in. Orlok surprisingly took no offense.
Yes. I'm not afraid of your boys in blue.
Orlok chuckled with a smile as he took his seat once again. He reclined and snapped his fingers, signaling one of his thugs, who promptly responded by pouring him a glass of aged Chardonnay. He closed his eyes and wafted it below his nose.
Fine year.
He mused dreamily.
You want for a drink with me, yes?
Hale sighed and turned his attention back to his notepad.
No thank you, Mr. Orlok. I'd rather stick to the business at hand. So please continue. What happened next?
With a sudden grave look, and with a sip of his glass, he continued.
Ivan is staying with me for maybe 4 and 5 days. He keeps to himself, always in his room, and doesn't talk to no one. He is saying, "I'm hungry, Papa," but he never eats. I'm finding hair around the house. His hair. He is thinner, always when I see him. And then, one night,
Orlok paused at length. He turned his head, visibly blinking away tears.
Mr. Orlok?
Hale beckoned, looking up at him with a wry, yet curious expression. Orlok took a deep breath and another sip.
One night, I hear strange sounds come from Ivan's room. Sound like animal. Sound like breaking furniture. I open door and I see my boy.
Orlok paused to compose himself, reluctant to let his men see him in tears.
I see my boy in corner of room, covered in blood, and eating from a torn and broken corpse. He is staring at body like wild animal, but angry. Angry like Monstrul.
Hale stopped writing, looked up and adjusted his glasses.
So you admit that he's a monster then?
He is my son, Detective Hale. Monster or no monster, Ivan is my boy. But I see his face, and he is having sharp teeth like beast, and his eyes are red like demons. And he says to me, Help me, Papa. I'm hungry. I'm without words, and I am only watching. I watch him tear apart. Little dead girl, blood everywhere. And when he finish, I have my boys clean up his mess.
Detective Hale gritted his teeth and closed his eyes, shaking his head. A little girl. Just an innocent little girl. He opened his eyes and sighed.
Obstruction of justice, and now aiding and abetting. I assumed that was the case. But we didn't have a confession until now. You're just digging your grave deeper and deeper, Mr. Orlock. I suggest you dedicate yourself as a cooperating witness before you get in over your head.
I dig my grave? Who do you think you are talking to, Mr. Detective? Maybe I'm digging your grave, you and your blue boys. You think you know Ivan, thinking he's a simple killer. You know nothing.
Hale was much more annoyed than intimidated.
Just tell me where you're hiding, Ivan, Mr. Orlock, and I'll be on my way. There is no need for us to drag this out any further. You know we'll find him eventually. It's only a matter of time. So you may as well stop wasting your time and mine.
I've never told you I'm hiding him. Your blue boys will not find him, Detective. Ivan will be finding them first. He will eat again. And then he will not stop coming. He will come for you. And then for your children. You cannot stop him. No one is stopping him.
Just as Hale was about to retort, he heard the distant sounds of chaos, gunshots, cries of terror and pain, crunching metal and explosions. Something was attacking a SWAT team. Orlock heard the commotion as well. He grinned.
Ivan is hungry tonight. Too bad for your blue boys, yes.
Boys in blue, boss. The thug chimed in once more with a smirk. Orlock ignored him. Orlock took a deep drag from the new cigar and leaned forward with a wicked sneer.
You should run, Mr. Detective. But you probably are not getting very far.
Hale could hear a distant howl, a raspy roar carrying over the night air. He began to sweat and tremble. Gripped by a primal fear, without any further words, he ran for the door, in a panic, and Orlock's thugs let him pass, laughing. Orlock taunted.
Run, Mr. Detective. Run like frightened mouse. He likes to chase before he's eating.
Hale burst through the foyer doors and into the eerily still darkness. Breathless, he scrambled for his car, cursing his foolish mistake for parking more than a block away. He could hear the chilling sound of skittering talons on cement. Above him, behind him, to his left and right, he could hear the sound getting closer. He tried to run for his life. He froze with fear every time he heard the horrible noise. In the near distance, Hale could see the chrome of his well-kept Mercedes-Benz, shining in the low light of a dying street lamp. He fumbled for his keys as he ran for the door handle. He dropped them to the pavement as he felt the first bullet rip through his right knee. He stumbled with a scream of agony. He could hear Orlock's deep belly laugh behind him as he continued to limp forward, and a second shot pierced his left knee.
Where do you think you're going to, little mouse?
Orlock laughed as Hale's legs buckled and collapsed beneath him. He emerged from the shadows, pointing a smoking pistol at the felled detective. In tears, Hale crawled for his keys. Orlock shouted without direction into the darkness.
Am carne proaspătă pentru tine, Ivo. Vino! și omoară porcul ăsta infect. Fă-l pe tati mândru.
As he nearly reached his car door, Hale looked up. Through the glare of a flickering street lamp, he could see a tall, lanky creature in a long, black coat, perched atop the pole, gnawing on an indistinct stump of flesh. It dropped the stump, spattering on the pavement wetly between Hale and the car. It was once the left arm and hand of a rather burly police officer, now missing chunks of skin and meat, and with only one finger and a thumb remaining. Hale gasped as he shuffled back. Hale returned his gaze to the creature on the pole. He could see it hanging now, by its clawed hands and feet, like some sort of demented bat. It tilted its head and glared at Hale, and he could see a horrific face, a mouth full of dagger-like teeth, pointed ears, chapped skin, and a deranged look in its hideously bloodshot eyes. It growled at him, and with a throaty rumble, blood and drool dripping from the gaps in its twisted grin. "Please, please, please!" Hale begged, cowering pathetically. The creature pounced on him with a vicious hiss, all claws and fangs. It was the last thing he ever saw, as his scream echoed from the darkness into the cold November night.